Hi folks, HR Funk here, out on a cool November day to bring you number 23 in this series on Law Enforcement Qualification Course Challenge videos. Now if you have not seen any of these videos in the past, what I'm attempting to do is to fire a law enforcement firearms qualification course from each of the 50 states for the purpose of comparing and contrasting those courses and ultimately determining what I think is the best law enforcement firearms qualification course in the country. Now I'm currently focusing on duty handgun courses, and today's course is the Law Enforcement Firearms Duty Handgun course from the state of Kansas. The Kansas course is divided into 6 different stages that take place at distances as close as 3 yards from the target and as far away as 25 yards from the target. Now at some of those stages, or some of those distances rather, there are multiple exercises that take place, and I'll explain each of those before I shoot them so you know what you're about to see. The course requires the shooter to fire 50 rounds, and it has a qualification standard of 70%, which means when I'm done, in order to be considered qualified, I have to have 35 of my 50 shots inside of the white area of the cue target back here on the target board. Today's challenger is a great vintage revolver from the early 1970s. This is a Colt Trooper, and this is the first Colt revolver to make an appearance in one of these videos. I don't have a great deal of experience shooting Colt revolvers. Most of my experience has been with Smith & Wesson firearms, but still I'm going to give this one a whirl today and see how it does against this Kansas handgun qualification course. Along with the vintage revolver, I have also got some vintage Western 38 special ammunition. Somebody gave me this ammunition years ago, and I thought it would be great to use today with this revolver. This is 158 grain, 38 special, coated bullets. I think this is going to be fantastic because it's exactly the type of ammunition that would have been carried back during the 1960s and 1970s when these revolvers would have been in widespread use. So I'm going to get things set up and ready to go, and we'll see how our vintage Colt Trooper and our vintage 38 special Western ammunition do against this Kansas handgun qualification course. And here we go, folks. This first stage of the course actually begins 1.5 yards from the target. On the signal to fire, I have 3 seconds to draw and fire 3 rounds into the body of the target as I'm moving backwards and stepping laterally. So on the signal, I have to draw and fire as I'm moving away from the target. This drill is then repeated 1 time for a total of 6 rounds. And all 6 of those rounds stayed pretty nicely centered into the target. Now it's on to stage 2. Stage 2 is fired at a distance of 5 yards from the target. This time on the signal to fire, I have to draw and fire 3 rounds into the body of the target in a time limit of 5 seconds. This exercise is also repeated 1 time for a total of 6 rounds. And all 6 of those are in the target, so on we go. Stage 3 of this Kansas course is fired at a distance of 7 yards from the target. And there are actually 3 different exercises that are fired from this distance. On the first, the shooter begins in a ready position, and on the signal to fire, the shooter fires 2 rounds, strong hand supported by weak hand, and then transitions the revolver to the weak hand and fires 2 rounds, weak hand supported by strong hand, in a time limit of 10 seconds. On the second exercise, the shooter again begins in the ready position. This time, on the signal to fire, the shooter has 4 seconds to fire 3 shots, strong hand only, into the target. And on the final exercise, the shooter again begins in the ready position. This time on the signal to fire, the shooter has to take one step laterally and then fire 3 shots into the body of the target in a time limit of 4 seconds. For stage 4 of this course, I'm back to a distance of 10 yards from the target. From here, on the signal to fire, I have to draw and fire 4 rounds into the body of the target in a time limit of 5 seconds. That drill is then repeated for a total of 8 rounds fired during this stage. For stage 5 of this course, I'm back to a distance of 15 yards from the target. From here, I fire 2 exercises. For the first, I begin with the firearm secured in the holster. On the signal to fire, I have to draw and fire 4 rounds into the body of the target in a time limit of 6 seconds. For the second exercise, I again start with the revolver in the holster. On the signal to fire for that one, I draw and fire 3 rounds into the body of the target in a time limit of 5 seconds. Final stage, folks, and for this stage I'm at a distance of 25 yards from the target. In this stage there are 2 exercises that are fired. Both require the shooter to fire from behind a position of cover. In the first exercise, the shooter on the signal to fire has to draw and fire 5 rounds into the body of the target in a time limit of 15 seconds. For the second exercise, the shooter basically does the same exact exercise, only from a kneeling position, and it also has a time limit of 15 seconds. And here's the tail of the target, folks. In the end, the score is Colt Trooper 50 out of 50. Outstanding performance from this vintage revolver. By the way, I don't think I properly identified this revolver at the beginning of the video. This is a Colt Trooper Mark III. This was loaned to me by a viewer to use for this course, and I want to say thank you very much for letting me use your revolver. Now in this Kansas course, we saw a lot of familiar elements. We saw close range shooting, we saw some shooting and moving, we saw dominant and non-dominant hand shooting, we saw some long range shooting from 25 yards, and we saw some barricade shooting. One thing we did not see in this course was a timed reload. In fact, the course description specifies that reloading is the responsibility of the officer, and there are no timed reloads in this course. So that will count against it a little bit when I plug it into my evaluation matrix and compare it against the other courses that we've seen in this series. And that's the video for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments, as always, make sure you forward those to me. Remember, if you order anything from Optics Planet, be sure to use my discount code, which is... And if you use that discount code, it's good for 5% off anything you purchase from Optics Planet. See you next time, folks, and until then, good shooting. Bye-bye.